You're listening to World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world. And here are your hosts, Aingeal Rose and Ahonu.
Hi, you are very welcome. I am Ahonu and I'm with my lovely Aingeal Rose. And we are again in our wonderful home office car mobile business center, yes.
The Aingeal and Ahonu Business Center.
That's right. Not for very long more though, I have to say, because we're on the move. And if you would like to know where we're moving to, drop us an email. We'd be delighted to share with you our little plans that are fast coming to fruition. But let's get to the topic. Today we want to talk about guilt and forgiveness. And I have to position this for you and tell you where it's coming from first. Aingeal Rose and I have been practicing voice code for some time. It's a service that we offer to all our clients, and quite a number of people have come to us and we've recorded their voice. And what this little device does is it analyzes 1.5 billion bits of information and it turns it back in the form of a voice code that you listen to. And in that way, it resolves a lot of past life issues and current issues indeed. It's not right, Aingeal Rose?
Right. You're basically using sound frequencies to cancel old patterns and programs.
Yeah. And we started by doing what the manufacturer recommended, which is like a Tesla coil device. And that was to record the 5 vowel sounds in English. And the reason why they suggested that was because it captures really the significant sounds in the English language. Isn't that right? That's what they wanted to try and get at. And thereby analyze what's going on in your consciousness and in your subconscious. So we were doing that for some time. And then we hit upon the idea of using the Ho'oponopono statement instead. And if anybody is familiar with that, you'll know that the statement is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. We won't go into the history of that or where it came from right now because we've dealt with that in other videos. And besides, if you were to search for Ho'oponopono, you'll find lots of information about it on the internet. But we started doing voice code analysis on ourselves and people saying that Ho'oponopono statement. And we had great results with it. Isn't that right, Aingeal Rose?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're not going to reveal anything. She's keeping tight-lipped about it because it's actually deep stuff. There's stuff that comes up with these voice codes all the time, and it can be deep and it can go back into lifetimes. And without going into too much personal stuff for ourselves or for our clients, suffices to say that one of the things that was coming up for me was about feeling guilty about stuff that happened in your life. And we all have stuff, no matter what it is. You know, I remember stealing candy when I was, 6 or 7 years of age, and it's still in my memory. I remember going into Woolworths and putting my hand into the jar when the cash register person wasn't looking and putting it in my pocket, and it's like as if the guilt.
Can't believe you're telling me this.
I know. Can you believe it? But this is
what. Who am I married to?
the guilt of that is still there.
I never did any such thing.
I know. You are as white as the driven snow. I know. You're a model citizen. There's no doubt about it. But I'm mentioning that. I suppose sometimes when you say something and you admit something, it helps alleviate the guilt. No, let's get to the point. The point is that we all have stuff, no matter what it is. Sometimes you say things in anger. Sometimes you do something, and you feel guilty about it, and it gets buried sometimes, and other times you're straight up and apologize for it and all the rest of it. So, what was coming up for me in particular was that in the Ho'oponopono statement, we're saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Now, the last two in the sentence, I love you, thank you, we'll deal with at another point in time. But these first two, I immediately began to think, that was great for the first while. It was absolutely wonderful for the first while, because it like as if I was apologizing out loud for things that happened in my past. And I would mentally bring to mind the people who I had hurt for whatever reason, and I was apologizing to them and saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and all of that. But lately, it's like as if the voice code was bringing to the surface and was working, that was now done with and dealt with. Now, how can I say that? I can say that because I began to feel as if, what are you apologizing for? You don't need to apologize anymore. The days of the apologies are done. You're sorted. And I was trying to clear this in my head, and I spoke to Aingeal Rose about it, and Aingeal Rose really cleared the air, because she understands what Ho'oponopono is trying to do. So can you explain that, Aingeal Rose?
Well, my interpretation of Ho'oponopono is that you're making a statement to forgive the idea that you've come down into a physical planet, and just by doing so, you're bought into the ego thought system, and you're part of the creation of suffering because of that. So to me, when you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, you're basically saying it to the world, like apologizing for any contribution you have made to the ego's world of suffering. So it's like, to me, it's an eraser.
Yeah.
In your mind.
Yes.
About, being part of the ego's thought system, which is very separatist, as we know. And you're affirming, really, that none of us are really that we're really pure spirit. And because of that, we're innocent. Well,
that's what I liked about the Ho'oponopono statement, because I felt as if there was three aspects to it. First of all, now this is only my interpretation. I felt that, first of all, I was apologizing to those that I had hurt, that I had caused hurt to, in the same way as Aingeal Rose talked, but she's looking at it at a different level. But the second level for me was where it's like as if I was looking back at myself. I was talking to myself. My higher self was looking back to me and saying, I'm sorry, for you being in that delusion, and for all the mistakes that you've made in your life. I'm sorry. And then there was the part of me, like as myself, the physical bit, looking to my higher self, saying, look, I'm sorry that I haven't lived up to your expectations. I'm sorry I'm not the enlightened guru that perhaps I should know that I am. Do you understand? So there was all these levels of apologies going on. And that's why this came up, because out of it all, we're coming to the point of forgiveness. And it's like as if the Ho'oponopono statement erases and negates all of it on all the levels, no matter who's doing the talking, whether you, your higher self, God, you talking to God, God talking to you, you talking to your younger self, you talking to a past life self of yours, whatever the situation is. Ultimately, it has to do with recognizing that it's all a world of illusion, totally, and that it's like as if it never happened in the first place, and there was no need for the apologies. There was no need for the feeling of guilt associated with anything. Now, I know that's not easy. I know for myself, because here's me talking about apologizing and feeling guilty over taking a few sweets, candy, whereas there are people out there that have committed murder or rape or incest or whatever the hell it might be, and it's very difficult to erase that type of deep guilt from the conscious mind. I understand. So I'm not saying that this is easy. But when we get into this whole idea of being sorry and begging for forgiveness, it's like we're going back to the church's teachings of, you're all guilty of original sin, and therefore you must suffer in order to get out of it. And I'm going to make you suffer because I'm a cruel God, an all-powerful God that's going to make you suffer until you atone for your sins. That's not what's going on at all. And it was a huge awakening for me to realize that the forgiveness is us individually, us collectively, us at all the different levels of understanding of who we are, where we're going, what we're doing, and that there's no place for guilt at all. Anywhere. No place for guilt. We created it. We made it up. We've done it on multiple levels in order to have power and control. And that's what's really coming out of all of this. So,
well, I think it's the belief in guilt that's the problem. Because guilt demands punishment. So as long as you want to believe in guilt on any level, whether it's yourself or someone else, it's going to demand some sort of a punishment. And then you have to say, well, then you believe in a punishing God source. Which, from all my experience in the Akashic Records, that is not the case. God is loving. All he does is give another opportunity to know love. And that's it. Over and over and over again, no matter what anybody has done. That's the truth. So, to get yourself to believe in that totally, in complete innocence and complete love, that you love that much, is really the chore I think people have in their minds.
Yes, yeah. So have a listen to some of these comments that I picked up from the likes of LinkedIn, and I'm not able to attribute all of them because I wasn't able to get all of the full names and their email addresses and all of that out of LinkedIn. But where possible, I have given full attribution to the people's comments. So have a listen to some of these, and you'll realize that people are at all different levels of understanding about guilt and punishment and forgiveness. And we'll come back to it in a few minutes. So some of the quotations that I want to read to you are, for example, Dr. Julie Smith said on LinkedIn, "If you live in England, then the word sorry is something you hear on a daily basis as you go about your life. It can be considered good manners in a variety of situations, but when apologizing is driven by more than just cultural habits, it can be linked to low self-esteem, shame, and trauma. So look out for those apologies today and notice the impact they have on how you feel. Also notice what feelings come up if you try resisting an unnecessary apology. This can help us to understand what's going on in more depth. Stopping all the unnecessary apologies won't fix low self-esteem by itself, but it will help, and changing these small behaviors is a significant piece of the larger puzzle." And now I want to go on to another person on LinkedIn also, on a similar thread, Carrie Ann Nadeau. She's the CEO at Loop. And she said, "Ladies, stop apologizing." Now, I'm sure this is applicable to men also, but I'm just reading you word for word what she said. "Ladies, stop apologizing. Sorry I'm late. Sorry I got confused. Sorry I missed your call. You're busy, not wrong." And then in that same thread of replies and responses, which was quite a busy thread, I have to tell you, language is so important. Stop "sorry I'm late." Try "thank you for your patience" instead. And then another person responded and said, "One of my favorite phrases that I began to implement a few years ago is, 'Thank you for waiting for me,' or 'Thanks for being patient.' It immediately praises and expresses gratitude towards the other person and doesn't apologize for anything because in most instances there's nothing to apologize for." And another person said, "So the cancel culture is now going to cancel 'I'm sorry.' I'm a male and I say I'm sorry when I have inconvenienced someone. It has nothing to do with gender or an expectation of gender. I'm truly amazed where culture is going." Next person in the thread said, "This is a great post, something I'm guilty of as well." Now notice that this person is admitting guilt, even though there's no guilt attributable, something I'm guilty of as well. Saying sorry and apologizing is easy for a nice, down-to-earth person, but it's difficult for a stubborn and arrogant person. A knowledgeable and reasonable individual understands how to treat others and thinks rationally. Next person says, "Let's stop apologizing and instead be sorry. Not just say sorry." 83% of all women struggle with feelings of guilt, guilty of not doing right, not being good enough, or the feeling of not living up to the expectations of what a woman should be. And I think that same comment is attributable to men just the same. Now, Amanda Gurley, who is the National District Trainer for Ferguson Facilities Supply, said, And it was this particular comment on LinkedIn that I responded to, and I spoke with Aingeal Rose about it, and that's the origin of this particular discussion, actually. She said, "I used to apologize for everything until I began to understand and recognize the guilt and shame that came with constantly apologizing. So I challenged myself to try something different. Every time I wanted to apologize for something that didn't necessarily need an apology, I would pause and think of how I could rephrase it. And so I began thanking people instead of apologizing. Sorry for the delay became thank you for your patience. I'm sorry I didn't notice that became thanks for catching that. I'm sorry for running late became thank you for waiting for me. Shifting from a constant place of guilt to gratitude not only helped me, but also improved my connections and interactions with others. So next time you feel the need to unnecessarily apologize, try approaching the situation with gratitude and notice how that affects the situation and yourself." So there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. It's food for thought. And if you'd like to get hold of the voice code from Aingeal Rose and myself, you'll get us by going to Aingeal Rose's website at aingealrose.com/voice. And there you'll be able to book a couple of sessions. We've got a big discount on it going on right now. But aside from that, no matter what the price, it's absolutely worth it because it brings to the surface all this stuff that we've been carrying around for centuries, who knows for how long. And it's time to release it. It's time to go into forgiveness. So go there, aingealrose.com/voice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Until next time, thank you from myself, Ahonu, and from Aingeal Rose.
AINGEALROSE.com. AingealRose.com.
Yeah, it's like Anne and Gail together, but it's spelled differently. And of course, the Gail bit is not the gale force winds like my mother used to say. It's gal in Irish, which is to do the shining one, the bright light, the light of my life. Till next time, take care. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Aingeal Rose and Ahonu on World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world.